This episode is brought to you by Blue Door Financial. Blue Door Financial will help you save money and reduce taxes to live a fuller financial life. To learn more, visit Blue Door Financial online at BLUdoorfinancial.com. That's BLUdoorfinancial.com. Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr., and I'm your host for the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Josh Axe, owner of NEPA Property Investors. What's up, podcast episode 93 of the On the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door studio. Thanks for joining me today, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. This was a long time coming, planned for several months.
Yep.
You and I ran into each other randomly and didn't really know each other. We just knew of each other, but we ran into each other up at Red Leaf.
Yep. Shout out Red Leaf. Yeah. Love me some salad.
Yeah. So, I'm seriously, I'm really glad I ran into you because that's where you and I just randomly introduced ourselves to each other.
Yep.
Like total weirdos.
Hey, I mean, that's networking, you know, we knew of each other and happened to bump into each other. And we both kind of did that like double take. Like, I think I know that person.
I think that's
where do
him.
I know them from? For sure, I recognize them. So
yeah.
It was awesome. Thanks for making the introduction.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm a chicken at that, you know.
Yeah, so am I sometimes, to be honest. But like we both did it. We both literally got up.
Look at us. Here we are.
But literally, we both got up from our seat. We both just like started walking towards each other, and it's like, is it you? Is it you?
Uh-huh.
And then like it was. Yeah,
we're friends.
Yeah, yeah. So no, it's cool, man. I'm glad to have you here. So you've got a really interesting and compelling story. You know, your background, I know a little bit about it, but I'm looking forward to hearing some more today. But let's kind of start a little bit about you because you're not from Northeastern Pennsylvania, which
correct.
So I think you have a really dynamic story. Mm-hmm. So kind of take me back. Where are you from?
So born and raised in West Valley City, Utah, which is like 40 minutes southwest of Salt Lake. West VC, what up? And represent. So those are my people out there. They're awesome. Have some really good friends. Went to Granger High School, G House. They destroyed it a few years ago and built a new really nice school there. But yeah, I mean, I've lived in Canada. I've lived in Arizona. We most recently moved to Arizona. So yeah, I mean, growing up in Utah was awesome, you know, beautiful mountains and beautiful people. The weather's decent, you know, there's a lot of sunny days there, which I appreciate. And the winters are kind of interesting because you'll have snow and then it'll be sunny that same day. And you're like, what is going on here? So lots of hiking and awesome stuff. And families out there, they're doing great. And so moving to Canada was interesting.
Yeah, why'd you move to Canada?
Well, growing up, I was kind of a rebel, believe it or not. I did my own thing, marched to the beat of my own drum, and ended up having like the, 15, 16-year-old breakup that everyone kind of goes through. And I was devastated because I thought, I'm in love, and my best friend growing up, John, had been smoking weed behind my back. He didn't tell me because, he knew that I'd partake, and we were against it like in junior high. We had friends who were doing it and we thought, we're better than that. We used to like rollerblade and stuff and like grind the rails or whatever, like so nerdy. Like I don't even tell people that anymore because it's like, oh, you're a fruit booter or whatever, but it was fun, man. Like we had a lot of good times doing that. Me and my girlfriend at the time had broken up. I was devastated, and he happened to have some weed and was like, hey, like, just so you know, I've been smoking, and like, if you want to smoke, I have some, like, it might make you feel better. And so I remember I smoked and instantly felt better. No cares in the world, was laughing my ass off, like just felt so good and like euphoric and whatever. And I swear I was stoned for at least 3 days. Like just blasted. I mean, it was like chronic of the gods, so that was my first experience. And like, I remember I was I was having like twitches because I was so stoned, and like, that's where I wanted to be because I was, emotionally I was hurting. So anyways, at the time in high school, I was taking like a lot of business classes, like accounting. My goal was to open up like a car shop, like where we modify engines and, turbo cars and do all this other stuff. So I loved that and like always wanted to do that. So I was taking classes to do that, auto mechanics, accounting, business management, marketing. So I was taking all these classes, and a lot of the concepts that I had learned in there, I bought a bag of weed and then I realized that like, oh, if I get a half an ounce of weed, there's 4 eighths. And if I sell 3 of the eighths, I make enough money to buy another half ounce and I get to keep the eighth for myself. I'm like, whoa, that sounds cool. So literally like within a week of me starting smoking weed, I was like, well, I'm going to sell it so that I don't have to like pay for it, And so like that kind of like, that's always been my mentality. Like, I was the kid with like the lemonade stand. Like I did that a couple times.
So you had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Oh yeah. Like we'd shovel snow, we'd mow lawns, like just whatever. And pretty quick on, I started dealing.
And how old were you at this point? Like
15, 16. Yeah. I mean, I was young. So like I accelerated very fast into poor choices, pretty quick. So, started drinking every weekend, started partying, and like our friend group really like embraced that. And we all like in high school just kind of went full tilt boogie that way. So, high school is kind of a blur, actually. And, so got into that. And by knowing drug dealers, you have connections to other things, right? So like I started dealing and I started meeting other dealers and like their dealers and whatever. So then it was like, oh, well, let's try mushrooms. Let's see what that's like. Oh, well, let's try cocaine. We watched Scarface. I wonder what that's like. We should try that, and then, oh, well, what is ecstasy like? And so like we just kept trying more and more stuff and like whatever we could get our hands on, we would try. And it was really like looking back at it, I was running from emotions and feelings and like,
you're just trying to cover something else.
I was covering something up, and so, and I didn't have anything better to do, like that was just like, I felt lost and I didn't have a purpose and like, I was just young and dumb. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to do this. Like, it's fun. It feels good. I might as well like just continue it because I didn't see the negative repercussions of any of it. Right. Like we'd get, picked up by cops and it was like, oh, you have a little alcohol ticket and like be on your way. Or
so what did you think that like, oh, it's just a little temporary phase and it'll,
for sure.
And then,
I remember,
I'll move on.
I literally remember I came home from high school one day, big bag of weed, and I thought my mom was at work. So I pour it on my like desk in my room, huge bag. I mean, at least an ounce of weed, to me, it was a huge amount at the time. So I'm sitting there and I'm like breaking it up into different bags because I'm going to sell it. And my mom walks in and she's like losing it. She's so mad. How could you do this in my house? Da, 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 right? My parents had been divorced at this point, so like she was just so heated. And I'm like, Mom, don't worry. It's just a phase. Like, and I was so set, and like, looking back, I was very manipulative of my mom and I feel bad about it now, but it was a means to an end back then. Right. And I didn't realize that I had these addictive tendencies and behaviors and stuff until later on when I could recognize them and I kind of had some clarity of my own. So basically convinced my mom that like, hey, this is just a phase. I'm in high school. Like, I know you used to smoke. Like, I know you used to do these things. Like, come on. Like, really, you're going to harp on me? Like, I know you did it. And so I like really like worked it in my favor. And then it got to the point where we were partying at my house. We were smoking at my house because like, hey, Josh's mom won't care or like whatever. So she would still get mad, like I don't want to paint her as this like person that didn't care and let me do whatever I want. Like, absolutely, that's not the case. But
you were just a rebel.
I was a rebel anyway. And like the discipline wasn't bad enough for me to stop. If that makes sense, right? Like she could have been really harsh on me. Sometimes she would send me to my dad's, but like I knew that my dad had been smoking too. So I'm like, who's the bad guy here? I'm not the bad guy. Like, why are you beating me up? And they're like, well, you're in high school. I'm like, yeah, but it's just high school. Like I'm doing good in school. And so anyways, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because I do like going down rabbit holes. But one of the so let's bounce back to rollerblading. I broke my arm several times, my wrists, multiple times each arm. And I remember there was an older guy that we would skate with, and he had mentioned to me, like, and he was like the best. I mean, Hunter Library in West Valley City has this double set of stairs with a rail that's like almost to your nipple high. Okay. Like it's a really tall rail, and it's like steep, and then there's a kink that flattens out, and then it's steep again.
Nipple was a very specific height, by the way. I just got
I measured.
Oh, did
right?
you?
Oh yeah. I'm
Okay.
like, how the hell did this guy jump onto this?
Nipple high is the term.
That was the measurement, right? So don't forget it.
I won't.
Think about jumping
Nipple high.
Nipple high. That's pretty hard.
That's pretty high.
With 5-pound rollerblades on.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever. So I remember one day I'm like walking home from school, and he's skating at Hunter Library, and he's like, "You want to see something cool?" And he grinds down this rail, and I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me? Like, I see this in videos, dude. Like, who are you?" And like, turns out he lived in my neighborhood, and we ended up becoming friends and skating and stuff. And he was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years older than me, and like had moved to West Valley because he was getting into trouble where he was from. So he brought the trouble with him, basically, because he was also a rebel and whatever. So he like had mentioned that he smokes weed and liked Percocets and whatever. And like, I didn't even know what it was, because I'm like 15 years old or 14 years old when I started skating with him. So then fast forward, and I had gotten some for when I broke my arm, and I'm like, oh, I feel really good. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to take this to feel good. It was just, hey, I recognize that I do feel good while I'm on this opiate-based drug. So fast forward, one of my dealers, like we're going back to, when I'm in high school, one of my dealers is like, hey, by the way, if you know anyone who wants Percocets, I have some, and they're like $4 a pop, and I knew you could sell them for like $7 a pop. So I'm like, cool, I'll get 20 of them or whatever. So I bought all these Percocets, and then, I sell a bunch of them, and I'm like, well, I have these extra ones. I've made, most of my money back. Like, hey boys, you guys want to party? So then we took those and like, oh, we feel good. So then that slowly started morphing into like, my dealer would get oxycodone and, all these other ones. And then he got OxyContin. And OxyContin was really, really prevalent in Salt Lake City. So Salt Lake City had this doctor. I don't even remember what his name was. They had a specific name, but it was like the candy doctor or something like that, where like he was the guy where people would go and get these prescriptions. And so he ended up getting like federally indicted and like is in prison now, but like it was everywhere. And so one of my dealers said, hey, I know you like those Percocets. Like, would you want to try this? And so I tried it, and I got so high on it that I threw up, and I was like, wow, I feel great though. Like, and so then it was like, I started doing it like on the weekend. And then I was like, oh, well, I feel really good. Like maybe I'll try it in high school, like in the bathroom,
during the day,
in the bathroom, like, hey, this class sucks. Like, hey, do you want to meet me in the bathroom? We'll rip a line. So then we started doing it at school, and then we started doing it at home, and then I started doing it at work. I worked at a roller skating rink, because I rollerbladed, whatever. So pretty quickly, like within the course of a year, it went from like, oh, I'm using it occasionally and like dabbling around, to like, oh, I kind of need this to like function. And so a lot of my friends, like my buddy Jordan Davis, best bud ever. Like I was just the best man in his wedding. Love the guy. Jordan, if you're listening, freaking love you, dude. He's like, bro, I can't support this. Like you are screwing your life up, and like I'm watching you go down a path. Like I'm not down with that. And he used to get down with me like doing that. And like we were with each other all the time. Like, when I was selling weed, he was there every day. Like we're just brothers, right? And that was hard. And that kind of like, I recognized that, hey, I'm losing friends, but it was like, okay, but I don't want to go through the shitty feelings that come with coming off of it. So like, I appreciate it, but like, sorry, like see you later. And so, started losing friends. And at this time, I was probably selling like a quarter to a half a pound of weed every week. So I was moving some pretty good weight for my age, and it was good stuff that other people weren't getting from like the east side of Utah, and like it was coming straight from California. And so like I was kind of known for like getting this good stuff. So then when you start spending money on OxyContin, at the time it was like $1 per milligram. And if you got it for like 0.75, like 75 cents per milligram, it was a good deal. So $60 for an 80 milligram pill, one pill, and we were doing one of those a day. So it was like your money goes really quick. Even though I was selling, it was like I'm broke because I'm doing all this. And then it got to the point where I would get fronted weed from someone like a dealer, and then I would try and sell it. And then I would end up using the money that I got from selling the weed to go and buy OxyContin. And I don't know if you know this, but owing drug dealers money,
you got to pay him back, right?
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
You pay them one way or another, right? And
So what happened?
I ended up getting beat up in my house. People broke in and like beat the shit out of me.
Because you didn't pay him back.
Because I didn't pay him back. So like there's some tough, things, and like that's further down. Like when I was doing the OxyContin, like I stopped doing that. But then once I ran out of money, then I had a friend, well, not really a friend, but a peer, I guess, who was like, oh, well, if you do heroin, it's $10 for $120 worth of OxyContin, right? The same
So
like
it's
potency
it's
level.
like a tenth of the cost.
Or less.
Less, yeah.
Right. So like, do you want to try some? So tried that. And then that was like the slippery slope that went really fast. So I was probably 16 or 17 at the time, like really young, probably 17 at this point. It's all really blurry. I don't know exactly where I was at. I think I was still in high school, dropped out because I was using and like just didn't care about school. I just cared about feeling okay. So, once that happened, it was just like any money I got, I was just going and buying, and I could only get it through someone because I didn't have my own dealer, right? So I'd have to call someone and they'd be like, oh, well, you got to get me some, or, like you need to wait until I'm ready to go get some. And like, I didn't have a car, so I would have to bum a ride or whatever. So start like selling all of my stuff, start stealing from my parents, start stealing from everyone. Like I'm like full blown heroin addict, and I'm like 17, 18 years old. And I'm like, damn, this sucks. But I kept going because it was easier for me to continue that lifestyle than change. Right. And so had some friends, go to prison because they were breaking into houses every day. They'd like stake someone's house out, see that they're leaving for work, go and break in, steal all their stuff. And they'd be like, well, they can just file an insurance claim and get all their stuff back. So like, are they really losing? Like they get new stuff now. And so like they would justify it. But then like what ended up happening is one of them had robbed like 20 houses, and it was like the same deal at each of them. And so he ended up getting like pinched for all 20 robberies because they were all basically the same time of day, same, like the car looked the same. And so he was like walking out of a house with 2 duffel bags full of guns, and he was a felon at this point. And so like having duffel bags full of stolen guns as a felon
Not good.
doesn't look too good.
Yeah.
The cops are going to be pretty heated about that. So anyways, he went to prison, and he was someone who I was with pretty often. And then another person, Nick, that I was with quite a bit, he ended up dying January of 2010. And it was like his girlfriend was living at our house and was like paying rent, right? Because like my mom, like she worked really hard, but like we didn't have a lot. And so, and on top of that, I was so reckless and like dangerous that she took time off of work because she's like, my son's going to die. Like if he keeps doing this, like I need to be away from work to kind of figure out myself. So she stopped working for a while. And so like having the extra income was good. But I remember Nick ended up dying, and his girlfriend who had been living with us, we were going to like Arctic Circle, which is like a McDonald's kind of place in Utah. And I remember him dying, and I was like, holy crap, like this is real. Like people actually die. And at this point we were doing heroin, and we were also doing Xanax at the same time, which is a deadly, deadly combination because it slows your heart rate down so much that you just stop breathing. So, and heroin can do that on its own, but when you add in Xanax, and like when I say you black out, you completely black out. You don't remember anything. You don't remember, like, it's just blank slate. So terrible for you, of course. Also, you can die, which happened to Nick. So he had taken Xanax and heroin and was sleeping in the parking lot of his dad's apartment complex. This is January in Utah. So he had like a sleeping bag that he was in, but then he like tried to get out because he's like, I'm freezing. But he was so high and like falling asleep that he like passed out basically, or nodded off in the parking lot in January in Utah. So he ended up dying of hypothermia. Obviously they couldn't revive him by the time they found him. He was already dead. So that was the wake up call where I was like, wow, this is like, I could die, and that was kind of like opened my eyes. And, my parents supported me a ton, like they helped me out. They gave me a place to live, but they didn't know what to do with me. Like nobody really knows, like, unless you're a professional, like you don't know what to do with someone who's struggling with addiction. Like you want to keep them alive and keep them close and make sure they're safe. But like, there's a process that you should probably follow, but no one knows it. It's not like, and a lot of the treatment programs are like, hey, come here for 30 days and spend 20 grand. They'll be great when they come back. But it's a revolving door, and they're great to have you come back because they're like, hey, we'll charge you 50% of what we charged you the last time, because it didn't work out. But then they're making more money, So it's like, is it really helping, or are they just a business that's out there for money? So at this point, I think I was living with my dad because my mom had had enough and was like, get out of here. She also knew that Nick had died. So she's like, I don't want to have you around here and have you die in my house. Like, see you later. So my grandparents, my mom, my dad, they all kind of got together and were like, look, we know he's doing this. We know that he's struggling. Like, let's find him a place to go and like get him the help that he needs. So they started looking around. And there was a couple times throughout that process where I knew that I was addicted and I didn't want to be addicted. So I would get on what's called Suboxone. So Suboxone is a medication that people who have come off of heroin can get on that actually blocks the receptors. So if someone is taking Suboxone and they try and shoot up heroin, it blocks the action of the heroin so that they can't get high. So it helps in the recovery process that way. And then it makes the withdrawals less severe. But you're supposed to be off of Suboxone, I think, for 24 or 48 hours. Or off of heroin before you get on Suboxone for 24 or 48 hours. I think that's the safe way to do it. So one of my requirements to go to a treatment program was like, hey, I want to have Suboxone because I was a baby and I didn't want to go through the pain that I had created for myself, and I didn't want to go through it. So they're like, yeah, hey, we got it here. Because I had called a few places. Because they gave me, my parents and family gave me a list of like, hey, here's some places that we've scouted out. We all are in agreement that you need some help. Like, here's some places to go. So I call one and I'm talking to them. I call another one, I'm talking to them. And then I call one that sounded good. And they're like, yeah, hey, we do have Suboxone. I'm like, okay. And it was really like divine intervention because I called them, and this is like February 3rd or something at this point. So when I call them, they only had 2 people in the program at the time. And it was a 45-day in-house treatment center in like central Utah. So like 2-3 hours away. And they're like, well, what do you think you could afford? And I'm like, we're broke. Like I don't have $10. Otherwise I'd be going to buy heroin right now. I don't know, maybe $2,000, $3,000. Like, you'd have to talk to my family because I honestly don't know. I don't have the money. And so they're like, all right, well, put your dad on the phone. So I put my dad on the phone. He talks to him for a little bit, puts me back on the phone. And they're like, all right, if you can come today, we'll let you come for $1,000. $1,000 for 45 days. And I'm like, damn, didn't want him to say that because now I have to go. So, God had a plan for me and was like, get your ass over to this program. So Dad loaded me up. Jumped in the car. We started driving right away. Like literally from the time that phone call happened to when we were in the car was like maybe 30 minutes. Like, hey, we're not wasting any time. You said you're going to go, let's go, which is smart on their part because a lot of times people will dip out. So go to this program. I probably gained 30 pounds in the 45 days. Like I was maybe 120 pounds, and I'm like 6 feet, whatever. Like I'm a decently tall dude, but 120 pounds on me was awful. Like I looked like I was going to die. So, it was a great program. It was AA based, which the 12-step program is great. Fundamentally it's amazing. Saves thousands and millions of people, really. And, so I did that for the 45 days. After I graduated that program, I moved in with my grandparents in Sandy, Utah. And Sandy, Utah is like a bit nicer of an area. It's about 30 minutes away from West Valley where I grew up. So start living there, go and get a job. I think I had 2 or 3 jobs. Like I was just like, I need to be busy. I need to be doing stuff. And so was going to the 12-step meetings. And then I think, 3 or 4 weeks after maybe it was 5 weeks, but shortly after I started getting back into it. So I hadn't dealt with the trauma and the mental health issues that I had prior to using.
That started this whole thing.
That started it, right? So, what a lot of experts are saying now is that addiction is a symptom of an underlying cause, right? So the addiction is showing up because you have some unresolved stuff that you're going through, whatever it is. So if you can get clean off of the drugs and then deal with the stuff that you're dealing with, get over it and work through it, whatever you need to do, your chances of recovery go up so much. So basically ended up right back where I was. I was using heroin again. I was now living in Sandy, but I was just dangerous. I was going to die, and it wasn't I just started and I was only smoking weed. It was I smoked weed and then I drank and then I was using heroin again. It was just boom, really quick. Then I was well, shit, what do I do now? I've already gone through a treatment program. That didn't work. And I know at this point, I know of recovery. I know what it feels like to be clean. I know what it feels like to not wake up dope sick and what
was that feeling like?
Okay. So a lot of people ask me this and I've thought a lot about it. And I think the best way to describe it is understanding what it is. So heroin and opioid-based drugs are made to numb pain everywhere. In your arms, in your elbows, in your knees, your whole body becomes numb almost, right? And not numb, but feels good, right? You'd literally feel the warmth when you would do it because you would just feel good. And so what would happen, when you would get off of it, you would have pain in places that you've never experienced pain before because your body is receiving signals of nerves in your hands, in your elbows, in your shoulders. And it was this raw feeling where it's it hurts, but you haven't done anything. And just moving and walking throughout a day, there was nothing to numb that pain anymore. And so all of a sudden you're feeling pain in your joints that you would why am I hurting? I haven't done anything, but it's excruciating pain. And then you feel sick and you have no energy. And the only drive you have is I want to go get more and get rid of this feeling because it sucks. You can't sleep. You're not hungry. You can't keep food down and you're you feel like you're dying. Right. And so it's excruciating pain to go through that, which I avoided at all costs, and that's why people go down that road. And it's interesting because dopamine is one of the chemicals that our brain produces naturally. And it produces dopamine when we find shelter, when we have sex, and when we have food, right? Those are our 3 primary instincts, right? So our brain rewards us and says, hey, good job. We're helping the human cause, right? We're having sex. We're procreating. We're eating. That's good. Hey, we need shelter. Also a good thing. So what happens is opioids release that same dopamine. And so when you look at people who are experiencing addiction, when you understand that, you say, I can see now why they don't prioritize eating. I can see why they don't care that they're homeless, right? Like, okay, sex isn't even it doesn't even register as important to them because the opioid-based drug will give them way more pleasure than any of those things will give them. And it's instant, right? So, that when you understand that, I think it helps from the perspective of like, you can understand what they're going through. At least I can, because I'm like, I've been there, and so the second time around, I knew that like, I have this massive thing that I have to overcome. And I had, been on YouTube and, this is like right when smartphones came out and I had an iPhone and I'm like scrolling through YouTube because that was like the thing you did, And so it was like one video would play and then the next one would load up and then the next one would load up. And
what was this, like 2010?
2010. Yep. So this was 2010. So, this would have been end of September of 2010. And had my iPhone, I'm scrolling, I happened to find Moonlight Sonata, by Beethoven. So great song. If you haven't listened to it, it's really deep and like makes you feel. And I think the next video that played was a like motivational speaker video. And it was Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, right? E.T.
Yeah, I know.
Are you familiar?
Yeah, I've seen his videos.
Okay. So one of his big like first videos, he's talking to like some college kids or high school kids or whatever. And he's like got a green shirt on and a hat. And he tells this story about someone who wants to be successful, who like meets this guru who like has everything that this guy wants. This young guy is hungry, right? And so, at this point, my parents had confronted me. I was hopeless. I knew that I needed to get treatment. And I was like, my life sucks and I'm going to die if I don't figure this out. But I'm still hopeless because I don't have an answer. So in this video, he talks about this guy meeting this guru. And he's, the young guy says to the guru, hey, I want to be like you. How do I be like you? I want to be successful. Show me how to be successful. And the guru says, I can teach you to be successful. Meet me tomorrow at the beach, 4 a.m. The guy's like, 4 a.m.? No problem. I'll be there. So he shows up in a suit, ready to roll, right? Like, let's dominate this thing. So when he gets there, he's at the beach, right? The guy tells him, meet me at the beach, 4 a.m. tomorrow. So he shows up at the beach, he's got sand in his shoes and he's looking around and he's like, where the heck is this guy? He hears from the water, hey, I'm out here, right? So he looks out in the water, sees the guy out there and he's like, what the heck, man? This guy's in swimming shorts, So he says, come out here. I'm going to teach you how to be successful. This guy's like, man, this is a nice suit, but I want to learn how to be successful. I'll get a new suit, right? So he starts walking out in the water. He's ankle deep. Guy's like, come on out here. Come on out here. He's waist deep. The guy's still out there. He's like, man, how far out is this guy? Come on out here. Come on out here. So the guy's like shoulder, neck deep in this water. And he's like, I want to be successful, man. What are we doing out here? He's like, you sure you want to be successful? He's like, yeah, I want to be successful. So then the guy dunks him under the water, right? This dude must have been like 7 feet or something because he's dunking him and he's already neck deep. So he dunks the guy in the water. So he's holding this guy underwater and the guy's fighting and screaming and kicking. Well, not screaming, but he's fighting and struggling, And he says, right before he's about to pass out, he brings the guy up. And Eric Thomas asks the people, what did he want more than anything when he's under that water? And he wanted to breathe. And the guru said, when you want to be successful, as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. You don't care about what's on TV. You don't care that your game is on. You don't care about missing a meal. You want to breathe, right? Like, you ever been short of breath after running up some stairs, man? Like, you want to breathe. You don't care about the text message that just came in. You don't care about girls. You don't care about anything else. And so, like, I hear this and I'm in a place where I'm like needing that. And like, literally it just clicked. Like, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes.
You just said that to yourself.
I'm going to do whatever it takes to change my life, because if I don't, I die or end up in prison. I don't want that. So like, I need to want this as bad as I want to breathe, because the reality is I could stop breathing. And so that changed my perspective. And so the family and I start searching for...
Now, hold on. Before we go any further, did you ever try reaching out to him?
I've messaged him. Yeah, but like I haven't gotten anywhere. Like I DM him, but I'm sure he gets millions of DMs.
All right, well, we're sending this podcast to
yeah,
him.
let's do it.
We're gonna get a hold of him.
Dude, he changed my life.
Seriously,
100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're
like,
gonna figure it out.
It like spoke to my soul and was like perfectly timed, and YouTube's algorithms knew like Josh needs to hear this, you know?
Yeah.
And so like it just all came together.
Yeah.
So
all right, so you got together with your family.
Yep. We start looking at options for treatment. And I had this like, hey, I need this. You know, like they knew I needed it. They talked to me about it, and I'm like, I'm ready now. You know, like let's figure this out. So we start looking around, and we find a treatment program that's in Canada.
So this is how you got to Canada.
This is how I got to Canada.
I think I asked you that question like a half hour ago.
That's how long it took me to tell you.
I know. Yeah.
So I can tell a story.
Yeah. No, this is good. This is really good. But I'm kind of just for, in case anyone forgot, this is where it's going.
Yeah. So
here's your answer.
So I end up in Canada, and the story of getting to Canada is a little interesting. So my grandma and my grandpa lived in Arizona. While they lived in Arizona, they met Charlene. Charlene's daughter married a guy who was Canadian and happened to start a company called United Furniture Warehouse. And his company generated over $100 million in annual revenue. So very, very successful. He's a German immigrant. We can talk more about him because I have a lot of experiences with him that are really awesome and like play into, I think, who I am today. So my grandma's talking to Charlene, catching up, and John had sold his business for, I don't know how much, hundreds of millions of dollars, and created a foundation. And in that foundation, they operate orphanages in Africa, but they also created a therapeutic community, which is a type of residential rehabilitation for drug addicts. So,
and this is in Canada, right?
This is located in Canada, correct? Well, they have locations. I'll get into that more.
But the one this one that you were talking about is located in Canada.
Yep. So my grandma's talking to Charlene, good old buddy, and she's like, you know, because my grandma's talking about what's going on with me. She's like, my son-in-law, I think he has a treatment program there in Canada, and at the time, it was free. Like you don't pay anything, right? The foundation pays for it because he donated his he donated his wealth into this foundation, and the foundation pays for the people to go through the program.
That's incredible.
Still an amazing program, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. But so we find this program, 2-year minimum commitment. And I was like, that's the one. I want to breathe. That's the one I need to do to change my life. And 2 weeks later, I was there. And it was the day after my mom's birthday, October 15th, 2010. And everything came together awesome. I'm so lucky because so many people don't make it. I'm teared up, man, but
it's all good.
I had a lot of friends who died, and I knew that I was going to be that guy. And I didn't know we need tissues in here, man. That's the one thing you don't have.
I should have brought some.
So, so I pack my bags, go to Canada, and so I check in October 15th, 2010. And they had never accepted an American before, but since I knew like I was a family friend, quote unquote, they let me come across the border. It was also strategic from my family's perspective because if they were holding my passport, I couldn't come back. So they're like, we got you, like you're going to stick this out whether you want to or not. So I fly to Seattle because there wasn't direct flights or whatever. Fly to Seattle. He has 2 locations at this point. So he has one in Seattle, Washington, and then he has one in Canada, Vancouver. So I fly into Seattle, and they're like, well, we don't want to fly you straight to Vancouver because of something with the passport, or you only had like a certain number of days that you could be there. And like, they didn't want me to get flagged because I looked like shit. Right.
Yeah. And how old were you?
At the time I was 20. Yeah. I was 20 years old. I had just turned 20. So, they didn't want me to get flagged at the airport, saying like, oh, hey, I'm here for a residential rehab program. And they're like, yeah, see you later. Go back. We don't want you here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't an upstanding citizen of the United States. Right.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, well, we'll drive you across the border. So John Vulcan himself, the owner, like this guy I'm telling you about, picks me up in Seattle.
Furniture guy.
He's like 68 at this point, 69. Like, this dude cares. Like, he doesn't have to do this. He's got $100 million in the bank. He doesn't have to drive me from Seattle to Vancouver, Canada, but he does because he cares. And it could have been any of the students. It didn't, just because I was a family friend, like he didn't know me from Adam, but he's like, hey, you're willing to change your life. I'm going to help you. Coolest dude ever. So drives me across the border. I'm like, I had used that day because I'm like, well, this is my last hurrah. Like I'm, like I don't want to be sick traveling, like I just won't go if I feel sick. And I knew that. So, I'm like nodding off the whole day. I get to Canada. They check me in. They take a picture of me. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, I got to see this. Yeah,
I was rough. So, check me in. I think it was like a Friday or something. So I go to sleep, wake up, and they worked 6 days a week. So basically, I have to explain the program for people to understand. Like, a therapeutic community basically operates legitimate actual businesses that the students work in to offset the cost of their recovery. And as you're in the program, you learn skills, right? Because think about, drug addicts don't know how to take responsibility. They don't know how to receive direction. They have problems with authority. They can't take criticism, 100 other things, and they don't know how to hold a job. So when you think about a therapeutic community teaching them those things, how much better are they going to be when they graduate the program? So basically in Canada, the location I went to, they had a Costco type store called Price Pro. And so the students worked in the store. Like, there's a grocery department, there's a dairy, there's a deli, a furniture section, a grocery section, snack bar. I mean, everything, right? It's a full, and all of the proceeds from that get put back into the foundation to help like keep the program going, right? So that's basically how it runs and operates. And I remember like Saturday morning, they're like, time to get up, work, let's go, get up, and I'm like dope sick
you're in rough shape.
I'm like awful. So I'm like, I'm not working. Like I can't. Like my body hurts. I can't do this. And so they're like, all right, well, sick days, you have to stay in the sick room. And you just sit in a sick room, and it's 4 blank walls and a mattress on the floor. And I just sat there.
That's it. Just a mattress.
Just a mattress. And you don't have a phone, right? Like you have no.
It's like solitary confinement.
Well,
almost.
I could go to the bathroom and stuff, but like I'm just sitting there and I'm like,
this sucks.
I'm a dangerous place to be between my ears, like my head's messed up at this point and I'm sick as hell. And so I'm like, bad as I want to breathe, right? Like I know this is where I need to be, but I'm feeling like shit. And so actually that first sick day, I was so miserable just being by myself that I'm like, I'm never taking a sick day again. This sucks, like this is
just
awful.
Struggle through it.
Yeah. So, and then like on Saturdays we would do like a movie night where all the guys would go and watch a movie and like have snacks and ice cream and like all the stuff that we didn't have. Cause it was really regimented, like it was a program where you wake up at 6:30, you have breakfast at 7, you're getting ready at 7:30, you're at the life training center is what they called it at 8:30, you know, like your shift starts at 9, like very regimented because we didn't have that, you know, like we were out on the streets doing whatever the hell we wanted all the time. So basically it's like very regimented, almost military, like level of scheduling and like how you respond to people. And so, as I'm, you know, that first day, I'm like, this is miserable. And I can hear them like laughing and having a good time listening to this movie, you know, and I don't even know what it was because I wasn't in the room. But I'm like, yeah, I think I'd way rather be in there even if I feel like crap. Like I'm here. I might as well participate. So next day was Sunday. They did like a nature walk or whatever. And then after that, so you like work through levels in the program. And I don't remember what each phase is called, but the first one's an inductee. And inductees work with like the maintenance people. So like cleaning toilets, doing all this stuff. And it's a great job for someone who's new in the program because it's very physical. You're moving, you're detoxing, you know, while you're doing all this stuff. And so like moving and sweating and like lifting stuff and doing like just being active and having things to do for the first couple of weeks of sobriety is very helpful. So they've figured that out for sure. So anyways, did that, worked through the program. And, you know, I always had the mentality that like, hey, I'm not here to make friends, you know, and like the program basically is an each one teach one philosophy. So the people who are senior to you in the program are showing you the right things to do and the right things to say and responding the right ways. And so when someone was not doing that, or if someone had a inappropriate behavior, we would do what's called a pull up, right? So I would say like, hey, Bill, check yourself. And you would say, thank you. And then I would say, lack of awareness, you dropped your pen or whatever, right? Like you didn't do the dishes or whatever the thing is. And you were not able to respond after the behavior was given. So it taught you to like receive things, even if it wasn't accurate, but like a lot of people would be hotheads or like had gone to prison or whatever. And so like learning to like take that and not be like, go F yourself, you know, like, which I've had happen, you know?
Yeah.
So it teaches you to take that. And then every like Monday night or Tuesday morning, and then on Thursdays, we would have groups, right? So then in groups, we would be able to talk about the behaviors that we had seen or had brought on us or things that we were going through. And so those could be like pretty aggressive, you know, because it's like, this is where you let your emotions fly, right? Because in the real world, you know, I can't be at the grocery store and tell someone to go F themselves because they stepped on my shoe or whatever. Like, it's not going to get me anywhere. But if there's a safe place for me to do it, then I should do it there. And so that's what this group was. And so you would have that group input on like, hey, do you see where this like behavior played in your addiction? Like, do you see where stealing food and like eating snacks when you're not supposed to, do you see how that could like play into your addiction in other ways? And so like, it really taught you to like think about what you're doing and like the intention of what you're doing. And so I was always really mindful of like, why am I doing this? Why do I feel this way? And like, I think that's been very helpful to me to be able to like understand myself. So, yeah, I mean, the program progressed, I progressed, I learned, and they have different leadership levels within the program. So you can become a family leader, which you're in charge of a household. So you like make the shopping list and do all the other stuff. And then there's like the student council presidency. So there's like, you know, different members within that. And then there's acting program director or the actual program director. So I worked my way into each of those roles and for like, I don't know, 5 months or something.
And this was all during this 2 years?
Yeah, all during the 2 years. So I was the acting program director for several months, and I was getting close to graduation. And at the time we had a lot of people coming up from Arizona. So we had all these people coming up from Arizona. Arizona is right next to the border. So there's a lot of opioids and other stuff that come across the border. And I think there had been a couple waves of like fentanyl where people were dying, and like droves of people were just dying and overdosing. And there was like a lot of cartel violence going on at the time. And so we were just getting tons of people coming from Arizona. I think because, like Charlene, the person who got me into the program, was telling everyone about it because like she had seen me be successful and I was still there. And like, I think they had sent other people who were doing well there. So like we kind of got notoriety in Arizona. I was like, hey, this is a place where you can get some help. So as we were getting all these people and I was getting closer to graduation, the founder, John Vulcan, was like, hey, we're having all these people. Would you be interested in being the program director in Arizona? We bought a ranch. It's 40 acres. And I'm like, I don't know how to do a ranch, dude. Like, I'm from the city, like this is not my thing. They're like, we'll figure it out with you. Like, the program. That's why you're there. Like, go be the program guy. And I'm like, all right. So I accept the position. So this is January 1, 2013 is when I started as the acting program director. November, I think 21st of 2012 is when I graduated the program. So I went home to Utah for a few weeks, had like a little part-time job because I was getting ready to go down to Arizona, but they wanted me to start on the 1st and I wanted to spend Christmas with my family since I had been away. So, it's been quite a while, and I obviously was a changed person, so I didn't really have any of the struggles that I did before. Started the program in Arizona. That was amazing. So while I was working there and doing the program, we transplanted some brothers, as they were called, from the Seattle program. So Gavin came, Bo came, we had some new students come and started our own program, man. There was 4 of us in there. We'd have groups, just the 4 of us, like yelling at each other, like, what the F are you doing? So we're like working it, and it was a tough program and I had to make it tough for them because I knew that like, hey, the toughness is like what we needed, and people are interesting. Like some people need tough love. Some people need like, an arm around the shoulder. And so you like, as a program director, you had to kind of like ebb and flow of like, and I will tell you, I miss it because there's this weird thing that happens. And I did it when I was in Canada as well. Even in groups, you would be talking to someone and you would start saying things to them that like had to be divine, like from God, things that people needed to hear.
Kind of like the Eric Thomas video for you.
I'm telling you, man, like things would come out of my mouth. And I'm like, I don't know where that came from. And I talked to like another one of the, like a past program director who was still in the program. And they'd be like, dude, that was great. Like, where'd that come from? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, it's just coming out of me, And so like, it just gives you that, like when you're truly like committed to helping someone, this, like you say things that they need to hear. And like, I don't know, it was really a cool experience. And, so that kind of thing would happen, and it was in the program, and eventually met my wife at church. So, throughout this time I was going to church, we met at like a singles ward is what it was called. And so, I saw her and I'm like, whoa, who's that? It's like her first time coming to the ward. And so I go and talk to her and I'm like, hey, you're sitting by me. And she's like, nope. And I'm like, ooh, feisty. And so I'm like, all right, well then I'll sit by you. Cause like, you're pretty, And so
does she tell the story the same way you do?
Oh yeah. She's like, who does this guy think he is? And I'm like full of confidence. I just graduated this really tough program. I was a program director, which is like, really cool sounding title.
You're a cool dude.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is awesome. So she's like, who is this guy? Come on. You don't tell me what to do. And I love that about her. I still do. Sometimes it can be annoying, but Lauren, I love you.
Good save.
Yeah. She, out of all the girls I met, she's like, well, I'm going to school. I'm going to be a PA. I'm moving to Texas in like 6 months or whatever. Like, yeah, I have these plans and like, I'm going to do it. Like, watch out. And I was like, nice. Like, that is so hot. I love that about you. Like, because I felt like a lot of the people I was meeting were like, oh, I'm just waiting to get married and have kids. And like, that's what I'm going to do. And I was like, I'm not really into that. You know, like I want to have those things, but like, I want someone who's like got the fire too. And she had it. And so I was like, hey, I really like you. So anyways, we start dating, not through, like, she was so resistant because she's got these plans. And so she'll tell the story where, you know, I was going to the gym a lot at the time, and I'd bring my food, right? And I didn't have anywhere to warm it up. So I'd be like, hey, can I come like warm my chicken up at your house? And she's like, I guess, you know, and I was like, it's on the way, you know, like I need to like get, you know, like you have to time it, you know, the anabolic window or whatever. Like I was just making it up. I don't know if that's true. Yeah. I'm like, I have to eat within 30 minutes of working out, you know, like that's the window. You know, I made it sound legit. Mm-hmm. She's like, all right. So worked my way in, dude. And I'm persistent, right? So like, if there's one thing you'll know
you
about
weren't
me,
giving up.
I don't give up. You know, if there's something I want, I'm going to go for it. So Lauren was that thing, you know, and she's a great person. And so I wanted to be with her. So anyways, pursued her, and we ended up getting engaged. And I think we were married within like a year, maybe like 13, 14 months. Like it was really fast. And when we got engaged, I went to the founder of the program, and I'm like, hey, I was living with the guys at the time. I'm like, hey, like I need a pay raise. Like Arizona real estate's pretty expensive. He's like, yeah, I could, you know, she could move in. I'm like, not going to happen. Like I lived like next door, like the next room over. I'm like, that's not going to work. And so, they're like, oh, well, I could give you like, I don't know, $300 or whatever the number was. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like I can't afford a place, and like, I'm going to be becoming a family. I need more money. And so we ended up not agreeing on numbers or whatever. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to have to like give my 2 weeks notice. And so, did that. And then for a short time, I had started this like referral business for addiction recovery programs. I started it with my now father-in-law, but he had a friend who had a son who was struggling. And so I was like, well, I don't know if my program is the right program for him, but like, let's look at other programs. Then we got to thinking like, well, maybe this program will give us a referral fee for sending this person to the program. So we basically were like a broker, like a recovery broker, where we'd like, tell us about your child or whatever. And then we'd send them there, and then they would send us a fee. So we did that for a few months. And then I'm like, well, it's not really going anywhere. And I didn't know enough about business to do anything with it. I still think it's a great idea. And it's a rewarding thing to do. So I reached out, and one of the board members or advisory committee members of the program, his son-in-law had started a property management business that was doing really well. So I interviewed there. They liked me. The advisory committee member spoke very highly of me because he knew I was in the program and had been a program director and all that. So they brought me onto the company as a like owner acquisition manager or something. I don't remember the title, but my job was to go, they would get leads to come in of people who needed their property managed. And I was like the liaison. So I would sign them up, go find out what their house will rent for, see what repairs were needed, and coordinate all of that and get them signed up. So while doing that, I would go and meet with people, and they would say, hey, you know, I don't know if I can sign up because, you know, I have to be able to cover like my mortgage, my taxes, my insurance. Like I need to be able to cover all of this, you know, and it's got, you know, that's $700. I need $700 a month for this to even make sense, you know, and plus our fee was $75. So like I need $775 at least. And then I would go and run the numbers, and it would be like, oh, you could get $1,275, no problem. And then I was like, wait a minute, like they're going to make $500 a month without doing any of work, like any of the work, not taking any calls, not placing tenants, nothing. They're just collecting a check. And I'm like, wait a minute. How do I do that? That sounds cool. What if I had 10 houses? Right? So then I was like, oh, I want to learn that. So I like religiously started studying. Like my wife will tell you, I would not stop. Like I was listening to, there's a podcast called biggerpockets.com. I was listening to that every day. And then I would find like one of the people they brought on has their own podcast. And then I would listen to their podcast until it was done. And then I would listen to someone else's. And then I was reading and I was learning. So I was like getting all of this information, and I was like obsessive about it because my family, like my grandpa had been a broker and has some rental properties. And I was like, well, I know that like he's getting paid every month and like he's like the success of our family, right? Like he's like the most successful of our family. And I'm like, well, and I was going on like listing appointments with him when I was like 3 years old, and like checking out rentals with him and stuff. So like I had been around it, but I had never worked in it at all. So, obviously he was super supportive of that. My parents were supportive. They had a couple rentals before they got divorced. So I knew that it was like a good path to go down. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to learn how to do it. So I started learning about real estate heavily. And then the company that I was with changed their pay structure to where I was going to earn less money every month for like the same amount of work. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really make sense. And they were like a growing company that didn't realize they would have as much success as they did. So the commission structure was super beneficial to me, and they were spending tons of money on advertising too. So like my job was really easy. Lead would come in and I'd call them. Yeah, I want to sign up, and so like I would sign like 40 to 60 properties a month, and it was a lot of work, but I was making like a lot of money. So they're like, hey, we're changing that. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to find something else. And so my wife's cousin was working for a different property management company and had mentioned that I was signing up all those properties. And the owner of that company was like, well, I'd pay him 10 grand a month if he could do that. And I'm like, sold, like sign me up. So I go and interview there. They're like, yeah, you sound great. Bring me on. And what I didn't know is that their advertising wasn't the same. They had been very established, but had gone through like a recent split of the company. And so the side that I had split to, didn't have the resources and the drive, and like it was kind of just like a side thing, and so they didn't put as much effort into marketing and other things like that. So I wasn't making that much money, and I'm like, oh, this kind of sucks, and it was like commission base, and so it was kind of a sink or survive. And my second cousin lived in my neighborhood and says to me, have you ever sold a house? And I'm like, no, but I could figure it out. And I told you this story earlier, but I told it backwards. So I say, yeah, I can help you sell this house. And since I don't know what I'm doing yet, I'll charge you 1% or 1.5%, like something very low, but use me to buy your next house. Right. So let's do both at the same time. All right, cool. Let's do that. So he ended up saving some money by giving me a shot. I'm like, give me 30 days. If I can't sell it in 30 days, I can't sell it in 90. So give me a shot. He's like, fair. So hire a professional photographer, do all the things you're supposed to do as an agent. House gets under contract in a week. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. So then I'm like, crap, now we got to find him a house, So, and I think at the time my second cousin had four kids or something. So it had to be a bigger house. So we had to go further out. So we went looking several weekends and ended up finding another house, wrote an offer on that. And he ended up getting it. So both closings happened the same day. So that one day, I think I got a check for 7 or 8 grand. And I'm like, I need to do this every day. This is awesome. Right. So, after that closing, I was like, this is what I'm doing. Real estate sales is way better than property management, and I was lucky in the sense that I never was dealing with tenants and toilets. Right. And that's kind of like the nightmare of landlording. Right. So, but I knew how to do all that stuff, and I had to understand it to be able to sell it. So basically from that point, I had sold one house. And the property manager comes walking down. He's like, hey, you know how to sell houses, right? And I'm like, yep. I had only sold one, but I had done it all right, and maybe it was while we were under contract or something. But I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how to do this really, but I'll figure it out, So then I list that property for sale. And then I'm like, and there was someone who was designated as like the salesperson for the team, but I never met him. And so I'm like, well, he's not here. So I'm going to like work my way into that. So started sending out like a monthly newsletter to all of the owners that we managed for. And there was like 400 or 500. So every month I would send this thing and it would have a link that's like, curious to know what your house is worth. You may be able to get top dollar in your market. So then they would click it. And then it would pull up this like thing where they'd plug in their address. It would find the house. And then it would send me an email and them an email. And it would give them a breakdown of like all the comparable properties. And this is, I think it was called Cloud CMA. So it would pull all of this data for them, but it wouldn't give them a price. But it would send me an email that says, hey, this person's requesting a market analysis. So then I would follow up with an email that, hey, saw that you're interested in finding out what your house is worth. If you've been thinking about selling, it's a really great time. Right now we're having this special where we can sell your house at 5% commission or whatever. So I'd go into my spiel with them and ended up selling tons of houses, right? So I was selling like 2 or 3 houses a month and I'm like, cool, this is great, awesome. And then ended up selling like a 16 unit building or helped someone buy a 16 unit building. And that was cool. It was like my first $20,000 check. And I'm like, whoa, how do I do this every month? Yeah, I'm like, this is incredible. Like I've never had this much money in my life, And so like I ended up paying off my car and I'm like, I gotta be responsible, like there's so many cool things I could buy, but like be smart, because I had made some mistakes earlier. Like when I was at that first property management company, like I had a $7,000 month and then I went out like the next day and bought a BMW. But then the next month after that, I made like $3,000 and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, that
like,
hurts.
Yeah. I'm like, shoot, like I have this commitment, this long-term commitment based on short-term success, right? Like, so it was a bad idea. So I had learned from that and like, hey, I'm not going to do that again. At this point, I'm selling houses and then Lauren's applying for PA schools. So, we're looking around. She doesn't get into the school in Phoenix and we wanted her to get into school as soon as possible. So we didn't want to wait another year and then have her possibly not get in again. So during that round of applications, she had applied to like, somewhere in Southern California, somewhere in like New York and King's College, Pennsylvania in Wilkes-Barre. I don't know where the hell Wilkes-Barre is at this point, like it's not even a speck on the map,
Had no idea.
No idea. So I'm like, well, it'll be kind of an adventure. And to be honest, I was a little like frustrated because I had felt like I was just getting traction in my business to where I'm like, hey, like I'm seeing success now. Like this is awesome. And obviously going into marriage with my wife, I knew that she had dreams that she was going to pursue, and I was committed to help her see through to those dreams. So even if that meant taking a back seat for a while. So I knew that I was going to help her achieve that, even if that meant putting my stuff on hold for a while, because I figured I could pick it up, right? I'll figure it out. And it was only 2 years, right? I could come back 2 years. It'll be no big deal. And the plan was that I was going to so I continued to send the newsletter while I was here. So obviously we ended up moving here we moved to Kingston, which when I was looking for properties online, I found properties in Wilkes-Barre because I thought, hey, it's in Wilkes-Barre. I'm going to look in Wilkes-Barre. So I like found all these properties, and let me tell you, I was pretty cheap because I didn't know I was going to make money here. Like I think I might not make $1. I don't know. And so we were looking at some real dumps, and I like, now knowing what I know, I'm like, oh man, those were bad, real bad, like real bad areas. So thankfully one of the listings we had found was in Kingston. And so we crossed the bridge and I'm like, wow, this is far, like, oh man, we have to cross the bridge to get home, whatever. And we moved on to First Ave in Kingston. And I remember being on that street, I like FaceTimed her and it was like trees and like the sun was setting and it was just beautiful. There's kids playing outside and I'm like, this is the one. Those other ones sucked, but it was like $250 more than we were budgeting. But I'm like, we'll have a better experience here. So we moved into the property on First Ave, and we were just renting. So we lived there for a couple years. And there's if you're familiar with the area, there's a levee right there that's great for walking dogs. And we moved here with one of our dogs, Loki. So we'd go for walks, and then my wife met her friend Tia, who was also in the program with her, who happened to be from Tucson, Arizona. And it's funny because when we came out for Lauren's interview, the person setting up the buffet or the breakfast in the morning, they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" And we're like, "Oh, Arizona." And they're like, "Oh, what are you here for?" "Oh, PA school interview." Really? There was another couple here from Arizona for a PA school interview. She's like, "This is like deja vu,
Yeah.
So my wife ends up meeting the woman, Tia, and her husband is Mike. And so, my wife's like, and he happened to be a physician. So in real estate, a lot of times physicians will say, "Oh, I'm interested in investing in real estate. And I know you're a realtor. Yeah. Send me some properties. I'll buy them." And a realtor's eyes light up, "I found the whale. We're going to buy all this property together," and I'm going to help you find all these properties, and I'm just going to make all this money and commissions. And then the doctor gets cold feet, or they don't know about real estate investing. They never buy anything. So, and docs also hear real estate agents harping on, "Oh, you need to buy all this property." And so my wife set up lunch or dinner for both of us, for all of us to go eat. And I'm like, "Oh, another doctor who wants to buy real estate. Sure." And so he's like, "Oh, great. Another real estate agent who wants to sell me properties that suck," and I'm like, so we both show up and we just clicked, dude. Him and I are boys for sure. And it was funny because there's Lauren and Tia will talk about, we were just talking and doing the pleasantries, and, and I'm sitting there and I lean forward and I'm like, "So do you like guns?" And he's like, "I freaking love guns," and so then we just hit it off, we're talking about our guns and we're talking about all this other stuff, and we just really clicked. And so we started hanging out all the time because both of our wives were in PA school, so they didn't have a life. King's College program is really rigorous and tough, and so they're in the didactic year, so they don't have time for anything. So Mike and I are like, "We don't know anyone here. You want to hang out?" Yep. So we just chilled all the time and became really good friends. And I think a few months after we met, we were like, "Oh, well, what if we did wholesaling real estate?" Because we couldn't find a lot of investors here who were doing things. So we thought, oh, maybe there's just great market for wholesaling real estate where we'll get a property under contract. If you're not familiar, it's getting a property under contract and then selling the contract, basically, is what it is. So, if I can find someone who needs to sell the property for $10,000, and I know that you're interested in buying that property for $15,000, you're okay paying the 15. So I can get the contract with the seller, and then I can sell you my contract for $5,000. So you're still paying $10,000, but you're paying me $5,000 for the contract. So we started a company together to do that. We sent out some advertising, did some stuff. Nothing really came of it. And then we were out walking our dogs on the levee by our house, and we saw this apartment building. And it looked pretty run down. I mean, it's a big building, right? And Mike's like, "Why don't we send him a letter?" We were talking later that night. "Why don't we send them a letter?" I'm like, "I can find them. I know how to find people. I have an employee now, and he calls me a detective because I just dig in and I find people in hard to find places. I'm like a detective. It's awesome." And basically, we sent a letter to the person, his family. We found their whole family tree and sent letters to all of them. And he responded, and we're like, "Crap, what do we do now?" And Mike had properties. I think at the time he had, 8 or 10 or 15 units or something. So I was like, "Wow, a doctor who really invests," and I knew about real estate investing, and he's like, "Wow, a real estate agent who actually understands investing." So we were comfortable with each other. And so we send this letter. The guy responds. He's in Mexico. He's taking home like $6,000 a month from this property. You know, there's 35 units, which we didn't realize there was like back units as well. And so we, you know, long story short, end up negotiating with him to buy the property for $135. I was going to get a loan from family members. Mike had his portion of the down payment. So we were going to pool our down payments together and buy this building. But we realized that the property wouldn't appraise for what we were under contract for. So we basically went back to the drawing board and asked the seller, like, hey, like, you know, we know you don't have a mortgage. Would you be interested in doing what's called seller financing? And basically that's where he becomes the bank for us. And since he's the bank, he can dictate the terms, down payment, interest rate, you know, whatever. So it's a way for him to get passive income long term. No, I'm not interested. Okay. So then we're getting all the data on the property, and we're like, hey, this thing isn't going to appraise. So then he ends up talking to his attorney, and his attorney's like, well, if you do 99% seller financing, you like won't have a gain or whatever, and it may be beneficial like tax wise. So he comes back to us and he's like, hey, so actually I'll do 99% seller financing. And we're like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, what kind of grand slam deal is this? And actually we were terrified, because sometimes the scariest thing is they're like, hey, yeah, we'll do it. And you're like, what am I missing? Like,
Yeah,
is
like
this
almost too good to be true.
Is this thing going to fall into the ground? You know, is there like an Indian
gonna
burial
implode,
ground?
yeah.
Yeah. Like, what do we do here? You know? And so, we just looked at the numbers, 35 units. All right. Well, how much is it renting for? Where are some expenses that we can cut? So that was our first deal together. And we ended up putting down $13,500. And what's funny is we had both wrote a like earnest money check because on the contract it was $20,000. So we each put in 10. We got some of that money back because we didn't need it. You know, and it was really a cool, you know, and then we got like the security deposit. So like we actually got money back at the closing. We're like, what is this?
Yeah,
like,
what kind of deal is this?
What kind of real estate are we doing? Like, is this a trick? You know? So it was a really cool experience. And Mike was working full time in medicine. And, you know, we kind of had a division of responsibilities where it was like, I can be there and I'll put my like working office there where I'll work there every day and like help turn this building around, because it was in rough shape and there was it was mismanaged for a large number of years. The owner was in Mexico, like I mentioned. So the cool thing about the seller financing is when we agreed to buy the building, he was going to make more money per month in interest by us owning it than what he was making. So we took a risk saying, hey, we think we can make this building perform really well. And if we're wrong, you can just take the building back. You could foreclose on us if we stop paying you, but we don't want to do that. You know, obviously we want to have this be successful. So as the note holder, you're like, over time, if we're pouring money into the property, your risk level goes down, right? And so within a few months, like the building had been separately metered for electric, but he was paying all the utility bills. So every unit had its own meter, which you need for them to take over the utilities, but he was still paying it. And so one of the things we did when we took it over was we started getting the tenants to put the utilities in their own name. So that saved us $4,000 a month, like right off the bat. And so we just did a lot of things like that. We started renovating the units. Any of the cash flow we had from the utility savings, we started putting into the units. So every month we'd rehab another unit. And just we're turning them over as the tenants were moving out. Because when you take on a building like that, you have to figure there's 35 units. You'll have roughly 3 move every month because most leases are 12 months. And when you're increasing rents and doing what we were doing, they're like, hey, we don't want to pay that. See you later. And so we had a lot of turnover and it was scary. But over the course of 8 months, we didn't make any money, right? Like every dollar we got, we put right back in. And so, in September of, I guess this would have been 2017, we bought it January like 31st of 17. By September 16th, we had already engaged a bank to do a refinance because we engaged a bank because the seller had said, or like the person who had financed it for us, the seller said, hey, if you guys do refinance, give me the first right of refusal. I may want to give you more money if I have the money and if it's a good deal for me. So we engaged the bank to do the appraisal, and they came back and they set it up, and the appraisal came back 8 months later at $2.58 million. And we bought it for, actually the purchase price is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we basically doubled the value of the building in 8 months. And so with real estate, you can leverage 75% of whatever the appraised value is most of the time, sometimes 70, sometimes 65, sometimes 80, but typically it's in that range. So the seller, we sent him the appraisal and he's like, damn boys, good job. Like, holy smokes, like you guys really know what you're doing. And like, you guys have been professional. And like, we set up automatic payments to him just so that he didn't have to worry. And basically like treated him like a bank, and like he treated us as customers, and like we just had this really great working relationship. So when we sent him the appraisal, he's like, so how much do you guys want? And we're like, well, we were thinking like 400,000. And he's like, I can't do it, but I can do 387. And we're like, okay, like, come on, like,
yeah, close enough.
Yeah. So, we wrote the new mortgage documents, went to the title company, got a check for $387,000. And my partner and I split that. There were some like debts and stuff that our company had, so we paid a couple of those off. And basically, that was the money that I used for my flip business. So my partner at the time, Mike, he wasn't interested in flips because they're pretty risky and like didn't know if I could do it and like didn't want to find out with his own money, like, yeah. Hey man, if you want to do this, great.
Yeah, you're on your own.
Have fun.
Yeah, go for it.
So what's interesting is before we had refinanced, I had bought a property to flip, and it was like $14,000 in Pittston, really ugly house, like not in great shape. Made every mistake you could, right? Like I didn't pull permits. And so like while we're in the middle of renovating, we get a stop work order sign on the door. Like, stop, you can't do this. And I'm like, oh man, like I didn't know I had to do this. Like what? This is all new to me. I had learned a lot, but like there's intricacies that you don't realize when you haven't done it. So go down to the code enforcement, pay for the, and it was really simple. Like you just pay for the permit, like a lot of people make it out to be this big deal, but I just had to pay for the permit, make sure they were okay with what I was doing. So got the sign removed. My guys went back and started working. So we ended up selling it for like $67,000. I think I put 40 something into it. So like, I think in the end I made like $1,500 or $2,000, but I learned so much. And a lot of it was what not to do and like find better properties from the beginning. So started advertising and ended up finding some really great deals. So, one of them we bought for like $57,000, cleaned it out, got it on the market, sold it like 3.5 weeks later for $125. So from 57 to 125. And like when that happened, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm brilliant. Like I've figured it out. I'm going to be so successful, make all this money, and like, then I sent out more advertisements and all this stuff and like wasn't getting calls. I'm like, crap, what did I do wrong? Like I thought I had this figured out, And so, I got really lucky and there was some low hanging fruit and people hadn't been doing what I was doing at the time, which was like sending direct mail or whatever. So, I had a lot of success doing that, and then it kind of slowed down and I'm like, all right, well, I'm in this for the long haul. So then I really focused on like my business processes and my systems and like, what does a good property look like to me? And, I really narrowed down my criteria to know exactly what I was looking for so that my marketing dollars would go further, which was helpful because then, I would have a better return on my ad spend. So basically that was, how I started flipping, and I started flipping properties. And it's been a lot of fun. We've done a lot of really cool, really cool projects. and made some really ugly houses beautiful again. And I actually, I think about, there's a lot of ugly houses in Luzerne County, and unfortunately a lot of them can't be saved, but there's not a lot of people who are willing to take the risk on making them beautiful. So, you know, unfortunately a lot of the numbers don't work, because there's certain parts of our county where I could put $100,000 into a property, but it'll still only be worth 90. And then that doesn't factor in that I have to buy it for 20,000. You know, and it's hard communicating with a seller and saying like, hey, I'm trying to pay you as much as I can, but my offer is, you know, $12,000. And they're like, oh, how dare you? And it's like,
Yeah.
your house really needs like $70,000 worth of work, and it's going to be worth 100. So like for me to make any profit, I have to be able to buy it at this price. And I always go through the numbers with them so they understand like,
Hey, you're not just being a jerk here.
yeah, like when I sell a property, there's 8.25% in commissions and closing costs and things that you don't see. And also there's utilities while I own it. There's insurance while I own it. And having insurance on a property you're flipping isn't cheap, you know? So like, plus there's the financing aspect of it where, you know, just buying a property is, you know, getting the loan sometimes can cost $2 or $3 grand. So like, there's a lot of things people don't recognize when you start doing it. And I explain that to sellers so that they understand. And we've helped a lot of people, you know, like there's people whose houses we saved from foreclosure and they were able to walk away with some money in their pocket, which is a really good feeling. Instead of just losing it to the county or whatever, you know? So we've had some fun experiences, some scary ones, you know? We've done ejectments, evictions. I mean, all sorts of.
You've done it all.
Yeah, I've had fleas on me one time. I bought one recently that had fleas. It was terrible. So at this point, you know, we do a pretty high volume of advertising. So we do 20 to 25,000 mailers per month. So we have a call center that receives the calls. I have an acquisitions manager who basically screens all the calls, writes the offers, handles all of that aspect of it. But there's properties where, you know, and his name's Kyle. Kyle, love you if you're listening. Great dude. Met him at the gym. Just a real awesome person to be around. And really excited to see what he does, you know, in the next 5 years, you know, because he's a go-getter. And so Kyle will look at me and be like, what the hell are you seeing in this property, man? This is ugly, you know? And so it's been cool to like, because you kind of have to be creative and you have to have some vision for the property. And like, I think that partially comes with experience, because we bought a house in Mountaintop, you know, and there was like animal droppings everywhere, and it was just ugly and dark and rough. And like Kyle got to see the process of like cleaning it out, tearing the stuff out, tearing the stuff down, removing the old cabinets, opening up a small little wall, and like all the things that go into it, and like get to show up every couple weeks and see the progress and be like, whoa, like this isn't the same house, you know? And it's cool from his perspective to be able to realize that like we really are saving houses, you know? And from the perspective of the county, it's good for the county, because if there's a dilapidated property, it's not paying taxes. And if it's not paying taxes, then it's not going back into the county, where the county can continue to improve the roads, continue to improve the schools, you know. And like one of the coolest experiences I had, I got a call from a seller one day and, you know, hey, this is Josh. He's like, hey, I heard you buy houses. Yep, I did. Who'd you hear that from? And he's like, Bill Eck. And I'm like, Bill Eck? I don't know who that is. Like, what? Never heard the name. And I'm like, okay, like, well, tell me about that. He's like, well, my house has some code violations, and he's the code enforcement officer of like Shavertown or Kingston Township or whatever. And he gave me your number. I'm like, the code enforcement officer gave you my number. Are you sure? You know? And he's like, yeah. So literally, like, I've never met him ever. And so I call him up. I'm like, hey, so I hear we have a mutual friend, you know, whatever the seller's name was, Jerry or whatever. I hear we have a mutual friend, Jerry, and he says you're going to let me into his property here in like Trucksville or wherever. Yeah. Yeah. So I go and I meet him. He unlocks the door. And so we're like talking, and he's like, I really appreciate what you're doing for the community, you know, and I hadn't even really registered that. And he's like, I've seen your work and you're doing a good job. Like, keep it up. And that was just so rewarding because, like, from his perspective, he's dealing with the crap all the time of people who are not doing stuff to the houses. They're just letting them fall into the ground. And like, it's not benefiting anyone. But when we have the opportunity to come in and buy a house that is in rough shape and make it nice again, it's a really great feeling. And the families that are able to move into that property and feel safe and warm and welcome and whatever, that's a really cool thing, you know? And I guess in some ways it kind of reflects back to like, I'm doing for houses what others have done for me. And I've never really put that together, but I think it's kind of cool to think about, like, you know, I'm rehabbing houses when I had to get rehabbed myself, you know? So
I just got the chills when you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. I've never actually thought about it, but that's interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy story, man.
So that's start to finish of how I got to Canada. Do you want to hear the rest?
Holy smokes. That we got to wait for part 2.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I definitely think we have to have a part 2 because I want to hear, you know, and I feel like we can go on a whole another show of like,
For sure.
actually doing it and making money and how to do it and all that stuff. If you're willing to share the
Yeah,
knowledge.
absolutely.
Yeah. I'd love to have you back on sometime, but, but you're only in town right now for just a short time. You moved back to Arizona, right?
Yep.
And, I'm glad we were able to connect, but before we end, I just want to, you know, kind of go back to, your journey to sobriety. And do you have a message or anything that you want to share based on your experiences? If there's anyone that's listening that is either struggling with, you know, what you struggled with, or maybe someone that's listening that knows somebody that's struggling, what would you say?
Yeah. So I would just say that, no matter how far deep you are into your addiction, there's hope, and that hope comes with hard work, and you need to be willing to do the work, but you have to make the choice yourself to do it. No one can force you into sobriety. So you have to do the work, and you have to be responsible for your recovery as well. And the program that I went to is called the John Vulcan Academy. They have locations kind of all over now. I think they're opening one in Utah. They have one in Canada, one in Seattle, and the one in Arizona. I think they have one in California as well, if I didn't mention that. But give them a call if you're serious about changing your life. And you have to be serious about changing your life because it's a tough program. And like now they have some entry fees and stuff like that, but it's worth it to change your life for sure.
Cool. Awesome. Is John still around?
He is. Yeah. I just saw him. So,
because I feel like you said 10 years ago, he was what, like?
Yeah. So I think he's in his 80s, but I mean,
okay.
And I want to talk more about him too, maybe in the next one, because he came from nothing. I mean, he moved from East Germany, was in an orphanage at like 14, moved to Canada when he was 18 with no money, and built this $100 million furniture empire and donated it all. So like, it's a wild, wild story. And, him and the advisory committee for the program asked me to be on the advisory committee in Arizona. So now I am able to participate in that. So it's really cool to
That's awesome.
kind of come full
to
circle
and still be involved.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, well, I definitely look forward to hearing more of that story. But again, before we end, you got the sign over here you brought in, I buy houses.
I do.
Is that still the case?
I do. I still buy houses.
How can people connect with you?
Yep. My website is makemeacashoffer.com. So that's makemeacashoffer.com. The number you can reach us 24 hours a day is 570-260-9777. Our callers are on standby.
Yeah, good infomercial.
Yeah, but no, we buy houses, we buy rentals, and we're excited to help improve the area.
Awesome.
So,
well, man, this was super cool. I'm so glad I ran into you that day at up at Red Leaf.
Yeah, thank you. It's honestly been a pleasure. Yeah.
Before we end, how long have you been sober?
just over 11 years.
Awesome.
Yep.
Congratulations,
Thank
man.
you. Appreciate it.
Your story is unbelievable, and we're gonna get this episode somehow to Eric Tom. We're gonna find him.
I hope so.
We're gonna get a hold of
I
Eric
would
Tom.
love to talk with him and like have an interview or something.
Yeah,
you know, like,
I think I'm gonna make it my personal goal to get you connected with him.
that.
I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I think we'll figure it out.
together, I think we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks. Josh Axe, NEPA Property Investors on the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door Studio. Thanks for joining me. If you'd like to learn more about the On the Stacks podcast, be sure to search the hashtag On the Stacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on the Stacks.